What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. My name is Jeff Spiegel. That is Daniel Starkand. And Daniel, what are you holding in your hand there?
Yeah, I was just telling you off the stream that I didn't really have to go too far with this broom. I kept it near and dear to my heart because I knew I'd be bringing it out once again. Big sweep for the Dodgers. The Giants, they were coming in all high and mighty after scoring 19 runs. They were in first place, and we just humbled them real quick. So I'm glad to have this guy back out. Hopefully, we'll be seeing a lot more of him, moving forward.
Yeah, I think we need to, get some crowdsourcing. We need a name for the broom. So if you've got
Yeah,
any
we
ideas
do.
for a name, throw it in the comments. Send a tweet to Daniel or myself or the Dodger Blue 1958 account, any of the above. But yeah, Daniel and I did a live post-game show Thursday night after Dodgers finished off a 4-game sweep of the Diamondbacks. And here we are 4 days later with another 3-game sweep. Dodgers had a perfect week, 7-0. And yeah, it's a good time to be a Dodger fan. And we'll just dive right in. I mean, what's funny about this group is how bipolar the team has been. So they start out the season 13-2, best record in baseball. Then they have a stretch of about 3.5 weeks where they go 5-15. Then we're sitting here. Do we panic? Do we not panic? Are they going to figure it out? They're injured. They've won 11 of their last 12. They've won 7 in a row within the division, beating the Diamondbacks and Giants. It's an absolutely unbelievable turnaround for a team in just 47 games to have a 5-15 stretch and still have the second best record in baseball. It's amazing. And I guess sort of to pose a simple question first is, which of those sections of the season do you think is more representative, or do you think the reality is probably somewhere in between?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is somewhere in between, but if I had to choose one or the other, it's the winning. Like that 5-15 stretch was very uncharacteristic of this team. We know how many guys are out with injury, but even so, like most of those guys are still out now and the team's winning. So, this team, even with all those guys out, was still capable of winning games. That was just a weird, odd stretch where they were playing bad baseball. Seemingly, every bounce was
Yeah.
going against them, which, we said all along, like, that's going to even out. Like, the luck part of it will even out. You just got to keep staying at it, and things will turn around. And lo and behold, they did. So I'd say the winning is more characteristic of this team. I don't know. I don't expect them to win 12 out of 13, every stretch, but we'll take it. That's kind of what we need right now with what's going on in the division to keep pace with these other teams.
Yeah, it was funny because at the beginning of the week, as we looked ahead, we kind of said, hey, the Dodgers have a really tough stretch of games the next few weeks. Obviously, 4 games against Arizona was their lone sort of weak link before they played the Giants,
Right.
the Astros, the Cardinals, the Braves, Giants twice, 7 games against the Giants in there. And yet here they are. They take 4 in a row from Diamondbacks, which is like, hey, more than you could have expected. They sweep the Giants, which again, it's like if they had gone 3-1 and 2-1, we'd be happy. Instead, they're 7-0. So it's got to be great, and especially the Dodgers, in a lot of ways, are about to get more healthy. We're going to talk a little bit later about Gonsolin and Bellinger and McKinstry, who are all expected back fairly soon. Of course, there's some Mookie news, some Jimmy Nelson news. So we'll get to all that. We've got our normal segments, big deal, no deal, stock up, stock down, and then we're looking ahead to 2 games in Houston, which might be of minor interest to most Dodger fans, and then a
I'd
4-game
say.
home stretch against the Giants again. So yeah, it's good. And I love this one, Daniel. I'll pose this question to you. There's been a lot of talk. What exactly spurred the turnaround from the Dodgers after this 5-15 stretch? Chad Moriyama, if you follow him on Twitter, points out the Dodgers are 12-2 since Mookie got hit in the nuts while playing the Angels. And someone else pointed out the Dodgers are 7-0 since Pujols joined the team. So do you give more credit to the Mookie nut shot or to the Pujols acquisition for this recent string of success?
Well, I just want to say they're also 7-0 since Yoshi
That's true.
Tsutsugo joined the team, so he deserves a little love there.
Yeah.
I'm honestly going with the new guys coming over. Even some of the guys in the clubhouse have talked about it. Like sometimes just seeing new faces could just be a breath of fresh air. And it came at the perfect time. Like they had kind of started the turnaround already, but not fully. And they've just kind of continued it ever since those guys have came. It's been nothing but smiles.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear, the impact that those guys, Albert Pujols specifically, has in the clubhouse. Like everyone seems to love him. He's hitting homers. He's handed bats out to kids. He's just been absolutely perfect in this clubhouse. So I'd go with that. But hey, the baseball gods, they got weird ways of doing things, and who knows, maybe the Mookie nut shot was the omen that was needed to turn things around as well.
It's so funny how these things work because it's a memorable moment. Everybody's laughing at it. And yet, they're 11 of their last 12 and 12 of their last 14 since that moment. So who knows? Obviously, all in good fun there. Dodgers starting pitching is the storyline. We're going to get to that. Some unbelievable performances from them. The bullpen is trending in the right direction. Even the offense sort of ticking up a little bit. I would say more credit goes to the pitching staff than does to the offense, especially when you look at the numbers. But everybody's got to be working together to win. So here's the plan for today. Again, like I said, we're going to do big deal, no deal here in a little bit. A lot of conversation around injuries and that type of thing. We'll do stock up and stock down from the last week. And then we'll talk about the 2-game set in Houston and the 4-game set against the Giants. And we'll start with this. Some big deal or no deal to you, Daniel, and I'm sort of going to lead this one in an obvious way, but Oklahoma City, AAA team for the Dodgers, has got a few familiar faces down, a lot of familiar faces, but Tony Gonsolin, Cody Bellinger, and Zach McKinstry have all been present there over the past few days, and the results have been really positive. Tony Gonsolin, who probably gets talked about the least of these three, but he had a 3-inning start, allowing just 1 hit, no walks, 3 strikeouts. I believe he threw something like 75% of his pitches for strikes. He was only expected to pitch 2 innings, ends up going 3. Cody Bellinger, 2 for 8 with a home run, almost a second home run. Zach McKinstry, 1 for 8 with a double and 2 walks. How big of a deal, rather than big deal, no deal, let me ask this. How big of a deal is it that all 3 of these guys are on track? I think Bellinger and McKinstry could be here as quickly as this weekend. Gonsolin probably 1, maybe 2 more starts before he'll be back in the next couple weeks. How big of a deal is this for the Dodgers?
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I mean, I don't really care as much about the success in AAA.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, that's great. It's great seeing Bellinger hit a homer. It's great seeing, Gonsolin throw 3 shutout innings or whatever. But more so, it's just about how they're feeling and the health aspect of it. And by all accounts, they're all feeling good. They're all progressing, and we should get them all back in the coming weeks here. And that's 3 key players right
Yeah.
there. I mean, Cody Bellinger, his name speaks for itself. He's a former MVP in the middle of your lineup. And the Dodgers have been winning, and they scored a lot of runs yesterday. But there's been some games where the offense has done just enough to win.
Yeah.
So it's definitely good to get a guy like Bellinger back in there. Zach McKinstry's your utility guy who could play all over the place. And we saw how he was swinging the bat to start the
Yeah.
year. So that's another big addition right there. And as of now, the team doesn't have a 5th starter.
Yeah.
So regardless of what Gonsolin could give them, just having a 5th starter alone so you don't have a bullpen day every 5th day is huge. So, yeah, those 3 guys are all key contributors. It's good to see they're doing well. It's good to see they're healthy, and hopefully they're back here, real soon.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. You kind of hinted. The Dodgers don't have a 5th starter right now. And so let me ask you this. Am I crazy for thinking of the 3, yes, Cody Bellinger, former MVP, that Gonsolin is actually the most important of these 3 guys? And the reason I say that is because right now the Dodgers are having to throw a bullpen game every 5 days, which then means they hand the ball to Trevor Bauer the next day and say, hey,
Yeah.
Trevor, how about 125 pitches and 7 innings from you? I mean, this last game, Trevor Bauer goes out, he pitches well. He gets through 6 1/3 despite throwing 125 pitches. I mean, the options the Dodgers had in the bullpen was like you had 1 inning of Trinan, then you had Nate Jones, Dennis Santana, and Edwin Uceda. Those were the other options. And so for
Yeah.
me, Gonsolin is the guy that I'm most excited about. Again, I'll keep hyping his praise. This is a guy who had 8 starts last year with a 2.31 ERA. He had 6 starts the year before with a 2.93 ERA. Obviously, a handful of relief appearances in there as well. And so for me, when I think about the weakness that is the Dodger bullpen, and yes, it's been improving and it's still top 6 or 7 in the league. But when I think of a bullpen game, the number of arms, like the Dodgers have a handful of guys that you trust that I think is making those numbers look better. And then they have a handful of guys that you just sort of cross your fingers and pray that they
Yeah.
pan out. And so if the Dodgers can get Gonsolin back to a point where I'm not expecting him to be as good as Dustin May was, I'm not expecting him to be as good as the other 4 starters were, but Tony Gonsolin is really, really good. And so if he can even get to a place where he can just give them 5 innings every 5 days of competent, 3.5, 4 ERA stuff, I think that's almost a bigger impact than even Cody Bellinger will have when he returns. Am I crazy for thinking like that?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what Cody looks like because if we're getting MVP
Fair.
Cody Bellinger back, then I mean, there's not 5 players in baseball that are more impactful than him when he's at his best. But you're absolutely right when just looking at things kind of on paper, like having a bullpen day every fifth day and burning, your bullpen so that the next day you don't have as many guys, and
Yeah.
then the day after that you have even less. Like that definitely it starts to pile up, and it's definitely not ideal. So I definitely understand and get what you're saying. Just having, regardless of, how good Gonsolin is, just the fact that he could give them innings, like you said,
Yeah.
that's huge. We saw David Price through a bullpen game and then we didn't really see him after that. Ideally, you'd like to have Price available
Yeah.
for late innings in close games, so. Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. I think Gonsolin, he threw 3 innings, so he probably needs one or two more rehab starts to continue to build up.
Yeah.
But hopefully he'll be here, in a week and a half to 2 weeks.
Yeah, we could be looking at maybe one or two more bullpen games, I think would be the ideal for the Dodgers. Now, with Bellinger and McKinstry coming back, I mean, Bellinger slides into center field. You've got Mookie Betts in right, and we'll talk about his health in a little bit. How do you fill out the rest of the lineup then with Mookie in right, Bellinger in center, Muncy at first, I assume? Does McKinstry slide into second base? Does McKinstry slide into
Mhm.
left field? Kind of how would you fill those things that roster out? Obviously, we don't have to get necessarily unless you want to into the right hander or left hander. Who are you facing? But I think McKinstry's going to be an everyday guy. I think Taylor's going to
Mhm.
be an everyday guy. I think all these people, right? So you kind of have one spot in second base and left field. Is there a guy that you like maybe most in one of those two spots?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you'll see is with Belly going back to center, we'll see Taylor get a majority of the time in left, and McKinstry get a majority of the time at second base. So Muncy's back at his normal position of first base. With that said, though, what it'll give them, it gives them the luxury to give guys days off,
Yeah.
which they've kind of done over the last couple days. They gave some guys days off, but before that, it was kind of they were playing their main guys every single day just because they kind of had to. So it gives them that luxury. Where with Taylor in left and McKinstry at second, that means your bench has Albert Pujols, who you could see in there versus lefties.
Yeah.
It has Yoshi Tsutsugo, who could play in left field against righties. So you got all these different options that you really didn't have before. Like
Yeah.
Albert has kind of almost been playing every day since he came over, which in a perfect world, that's not his role. And I know he's been really good, but he at the end of the day, he's still like 41 years old or whatever. So he's more of a guy who's a part-time player than a full-time player. So I think what it does, it just kind of slides everyone else
Yep.
back into their normal natural roles, which is just better for everyone.
Yeah, and the same goes for Gonsolin, right? Like all of a sudden, Gonsolin's a starter, and like you said, David Price becomes one of your 4 or 5 most reliable relievers. Jimmy Nelson, who we'll talk about in a moment, if he's healthy, slides back into a more comfortable role. And then all of a sudden, you have 5 or 6 relievers that you trust a little bit. You have a couple bench guys that you trust a little bit. Albert Pujols goes from being your 7th best hitter to being your 9th best hitter, which I
Right.
think is a really big deal for this roster. So let's go in that direction now. A guy I just mentioned, Jimmy Nelson, placed on the 10-day injured list with, quote, right forearm inflammation. When it's a pitcher, forearm and elbow are kind of and shoulder.
Not
Those are the
good.
three
Yeah.
things you never want to hear about, especially a guy like Nelson who has had a long injury history. The Dodgers sound optimistic right now, which is good news, but this can't be good for Jimmy Nelson. So how big of a deal? Again, I'm sort of leading the question here and screwing up the segment, but
Yeah.
how big of a deal is it that Jimmy Nelson's on the 10-day injured list?
Yeah, I don't know how big of a deal it is just because I don't know how serious it is. Like if it's just he misses 10 days and comes back and he's fine, like that's totally okay. But
Yeah.
like you said, oftentimes with forearms, that's right next to your elbow. So you never want to hear forearm, you never want to hear, biceps, you never obviously never want to hear the elbow itself. So it's something you have to be careful with. So if I had to guess, I'd say he's going to miss more than 10 days just because given his past, his history with arm issues, that's not a guy you want to rush back. But it's just really unfortunate. Like he's a guy who, as I just said, he's been through so much when it comes to injuries. He, didn't pitch basically at all the last 3 seasons, and he was really looking great, before he went down. He had, I believe it was like 17 strikeouts in his last 9 1/3. So he
Yeah.
was looking like one of the Dodgers' best relievers. He got off to a rough start to the season, and he really, discovered his role, and he found his form. So it's just really unfortunate that he went down at this time. But I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping it's not serious. I'm hoping it's just what they say it is, a little forearm tightness that he could, give some rest for a week or two and then be okay. Because yeah, I just feel bad for the guy. That's all.
Yeah, and this came on the heels of a bullpen game. So this shows sort of the downside to these bullpen
Right.
games is that it puts a little bit more stress on a guy than maybe you're hoping to. And so Dave Roberts is optimistic that they kind of got out in front of it. So hopefully that's the case. But yeah, I mean, he was a guy that we were starting to pencil into the back end of the bullpen that we liked and we trusted back there. So if he's out for an extended period of time, that could be trouble. More on the injury front. This with Mookie Betts. Quote, Mookie's been getting some treatment on his left shoulder, took swings this morning, tried to loosen up and get ready. It just flared up and didn't feel good. It hurt. This is when Mookie Betts was scratched from the lineup on Sunday. He sat out on Saturday, quote unquote, day of normal rest. How big of a deal is Mookie Betts missing 2 games in a row and having some shoulder injuries?
Yeah, Mookie hasn't really quite looked like his normal self pretty much this whole season. Like he had a back issue, he got hit by a pitch on the wrist, I think it was. I don't remember exactly, but and now he's got a shoulder thing, or whatever it is. So this is it's not a huge deal, but Mookie's the star player, the face of your franchise. So ideally you want him in the lineup healthy and producing. So this isn't ideal. But I think Dave Roberts said I think they're expecting him to be in the lineup Tuesday against the Astros. So if that's the case, then I think Mookie's okay. He's obviously battling through some stuff, but I don't think if it was anything major, he'd be on the IL. Like
Yeah.
they'd be with everything they're paying him and how important he is to this team. Like they're going to be cautious with him. So if he says he could play, I trust it. But it's just unfortunate that he's been dealing with minor type stuff pretty much this whole season. And I think if you look at his numbers, it's they're clearly affected by everything he's been dealing with.
Yeah, I think you're making a great point as far as the Dodgers tend to play these things very safely. And so when you have a guy like Mookie who's not yet on the injured list, that probably gives you a sign that maybe it's not risen to the level of seriousness as some of this other stuff. Of course, sitting him out Sunday and Saturday and Sunday would also allow them to kind of retroactively put him on the injured list, so they could be sort of covering themselves there. Definitely a wait and see here. I mean, we're talking about some of these guys coming back. If Bellinger comes back and Mookie leaves, that's not really helping you. At best a net neutral there. And so definitely something to keep an eye on. Again, he's had a little bit of this stuff. I think he had back tightness or something earlier in the year. I can't remember what it was. And sort of took a little bit of time to get himself back after that. And so hopefully this is something that doesn't sort of linger into the rest of the season because, yeah, I mean, again, obviously it's stating the obvious that Mookie Betts is arguably the most important player on the Dodgers from a position player standpoint. And so if he can't go, that's an issue. Shifting away from some of the injury stuff to maybe more of the overall big picture baseball, some fun quotes. Dave Roberts on Friday after playing the Giants said it felt like a real rivalry game, something we haven't had in quite some time. Big deal or no deal? This felt like a shot at the Padres to me. Maybe I'm the only one who took it that way, but just to say, oh man, this felt like a real rivalry. We haven't had that in quite some time. Big deal or no deal to you?
Well, you're clearly not the only one that took it that way because I don't know if you saw. I think it was Bill Plunkett who tweeted out the quote and it made its way to Padres Twitter and they just went crazy over that, which I didn't quite understand. Like even if he was taking a shot at you guys, like who cares?
Yeah.
Like what is a rival like what is being a rival or not being a rival change? Like nothing. Like everyone knows the Dodgers and Padres are going to be competing for the division, so who cares if it's a rivalry or not? Like I just thought that was weird, but I thought it was a funny quote. I mean, he's right. The Giants are the Dodgers' real, rivals,
Yeah.
and you could tell just I mean, I wasn't at the ballpark, but you could see from on the TV like the atmosphere. It was clear the Giants fans don't like the Dodgers. The Dodgers fans don't like the Giants. We saw Trevor Bauer, pumping up the crowd, trying to get them to heckle him even more. That was hilarious. But yeah, I thought it was a funny quote. I don't think, we have to read too much into this whole rivalry stuff or not rivalry stuff. Like at the end of the day, someone's going to win the division. Someone's not, we'll probably see these teams, meet off in the postseason. Like who cares if it's a rivalry or isn't? That's just kind of where I stand.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I doubt Dave Roberts was trying to take a subtle shot at the Padres. That just doesn't feel like his jam. He tends to want to stay
Yeah.
out of that kind of thing. I just thought it was funny because I was like imagining being a Padre fan and being little brother and wanting to be included in the rivalry and realizing that
Exactly.
Dave Roberts like doesn't really care. he's like, man, I can't remember the last time we had a great rivalry game, and it's like, well, I don't know. You played the Padres in a pretty big series a few weeks ago, Dave, but it
Yeah.
is, I mean, to be fair, the Dodgers and Giants, those games haven't meant anything in a long time. And so it is cool to have it mean
Yeah.
something. I'll be honest and say I'm not sure how long they're going to mean something based off how the series went this past weekend. I'm not saying that the Giants are a total fraud, but I think the Dodgers went in there and, I was looking at the numbers. I was like, okay, the Dodgers are dramatically better offensively. They're dramatically better in the bullpen. And starting pitching wise, the numbers are the same. But then you see the guys they throw out there, and it's like, well, yeah, the starting pitching, who's more likely to continue this? Trevor Bauer or Alex Wood, right? Clayton Kershaw or Anthony DeSclafani? Like, and the Dodgers did exactly what sort of we expected them to do, which is they didn't really get to Wood that much, to be fair. I mean, he kind of gave up the
Yeah.
two
Woody
runs,
pitched well.
pitched
Yeah.
okay. Dodgers continue to strike out. Like the over on opposing pitcher strikeouts feels like the safest bet in baseball when it's the Dodgers on the other side of it. But that was the difference. Like it was like, oh yeah, Alex Wood, like this probably isn't totally sustainable. DeSclafani, this probably isn't totally sustainable. Scott Kazmir, definitely not sustainable. And so that's the gap. Like, yes, the numbers now. So again, I'm not saying the Giants are a fraud, but I after this series, I'm more convinced than ever that the Giants probably won't be there at the end of the season. Like, could they be fighting for a wild card? Yes, but I don't think
Yeah.
this is going to be a three-way race to the NL West. Do you agree?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And just you talked about the pitching, but even just looking at the lineups, like
Yeah.
when you compare the Giants to the Padres, like when you look at the Padres lineup, like there's guys in there that like when they step to the plate, you're like, oh no, like here
Yeah.
we go. Like Tatis, when Tatis is on fire, obviously, everyone knows what he's capable of. Machado, Hosmer, Cronenworth, like they got guys that can hit. And then when you look at the Giants, like they got a few guys that are doing well, but most of them are either like no name type guys who are just doing well right now that who knows if they could
Yeah.
sustain it, or guys that were big names 7 years ago and are kind of reemerging here, and who knows, maybe Brandon Crawford figures something out and he's all of a sudden like the next Barry Bonds, or maybe he's just hot for a few weeks here and then
Yeah.
he's going to go back to being what Brandon Crawford has been for the past decade. And Buster Posey, obviously he's a future Hall of Famer, but he's hitting home runs at a rate that he didn't even do in his prime,
Yeah.
So credit to those guys. They're obviously hot and we're playing good baseball going into this series. But every time they step to the plate, against our starting pitchers and our bullpen, like there wasn't nearly as much fear like going through my mind, compared to when we played the Padres.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's sustainable. It feels like the most important word when you think about the Giants. You look at the starting pitching and saying how much of this is sustainable. You look at Crawford on pace for 45 home runs, and it's like how much of this is sustainable. And the answer is it's highly unlikely that it's sustainable. Yes, we're almost a third of the way through the season, but are you telling me that the Giants can put together the same type of performance the next 2/3 of the season that they did this third? I
Right.
would just highly doubt it. So again, if I would be shocked if they are within 5 to 7 games of the division lead by the end of the year. They could very well sort of be in wild card contention. I think that's realistic, but I don't see them actually being sustainable as far as the Dodgers and the Padres go. And one last note, I loved the Trevor Bauer stuff. The Trevor Bauer trolling was
Same.
amazing. The sword celebration is like 10 out of 10 on the celebration scale for me, just because here we are saying, let him bat flip, et cetera, et cetera. Like pitchers don't have really a celebration. I mean, you have Bueller
Right.
screaming the F word as he runs off the mound. Victor Gonzalez gets animated. I love that kind of stuff. I just love anything from pitchers because we're just not used to seeing it. The sword celebration, the level of troll that goes on there is amazing. I loved the Giants broadcast just being pissed about it. To be
Yeah.
clear, John Miller kind of just let it go. The other guy, Kuiper, I think it was.
Yeah.
What'd he say? It's lame or something. That's weak, something like that. But it was amazing. Then he walks off the mound. With his listening for boos and pumping the crowd up. It's
Hulk Hogan style, baby.
I despise the Giants. They're my least favorite team. They're my least favorite franchise. And it's kind of like the Joe Kelly thing last year. Like the easiest way to ingratiate yourself to Dodger fans, besides just being great on the field, which Trevor Bauer has been, is to piss off the Astros or piss off the Giants or piss off the Padres. You do any of those three things and you are more than likely to be well loved and well received. I think Bauer's checking every box. He's been great on the mound. We'll talk about him a little bit later. He's been great on the mound, but then trolling Giant fans on his way off after a dominant performance. 10 out of 10 stuff for Trevor Bauer. So shout out to him on that one.
Yeah, that was awesome, and we just talked about all the rivalry stuff. Like, what a way to introduce
Totally.
yourself to this rivalry. Like, literally in one night, Giants fans. I mean, they might have already disliked Trevor Bauer, but they never really had a reason for it.
Yeah.
Well, now they have a reason for it because he pitched really well, and he let them know that he pitched really well, which I thought was awesome. So yeah, everything Trevor Bauer. There was. I love how coming into the year when they first made the signing, everyone was like, "Oh, is he going to fit in the clubhouse? Is he going to cause problems?" Well, he has not caused a single problem. By all accounts, everyone loves him in the clubhouse. They showed a good shot of
Yeah.
him yesterday. I think it was after Lux hit the grand slam. Him and
Yep.
Walker Buehler were celebrating
Yep.
and high fiving. So Trevor Bauer has just been awesome in every sense of the word this year. He's brought entertainment. He's been great on the mound. He's given them the length they need, coming off bullpen games. So yeah, to me, he's been worth every penny so far. And yeah, I feel like I look forward to his starts more than anyone else just because you never know what you're going to see. Like, what's he going to pull out this
Totally.
time? So yeah, huge props to Trevor Bauer there. And great way to introduce yourself to the rivalry.
I was trying to find the quote of that he left his post game press conference with, like undisputed, whatever. It was a wrestling move, and
Oh
it was
yeah.
absolutely beautiful. So shout out to Trevor Bauer on that one. Okay, a couple more big deal, no deal. This was an interesting quote from Kershaw. These last two kind of getting into more Major League Baseball level storylines. Clayton Kershaw was asked about all the no hitters this season, and he said, "quote It's not good. I'll tell you that." I mean, I guess not so much the Kershaw quote, but what do you make of that? We're already one no hitter away from tying the major league record. We're not
hmm
counting Sad Bum's 7 inning no hitter. That's garbage. It doesn't count. So, what do you make of Major League Baseball being just one no hitter away, not even a third of the way through the season?
Yeah, I think there are a few factors involved here. Let me just start by saying, like, if Kershaw, who's a pitcher, and
Yeah,
things have benefited pitchers this year, if he's saying that then I think there actually is a problem because usually pitchers be like, "Oh no, everything's
it's
great,
right.
like loving the new balls," but no, like if he notices it, then I think everyone should notice it. The bottom line is fans watch baseball for the most part to see hitting, to
Yeah,
see home runs. Like, I know obviously no hitters are great, but like teams, getting shut out,
yeah,
teams not scoring runs, batting average being at an all-time low. It's not good for the game. People want excitement. The average fan doesn't want to go see a 2-1 game. They
yeah.
want to see 9-7 with home runs, stuff like that. So I think it's I didn't understand why they de-juiced the ball or whatever. Like it seemed like everyone was enjoying all the home runs the last few years, and then they went and made a change, to make the game less exciting. And I also think another factor is just with the new hitting philosophies, like there's a less emphasis on putting the ball in play, and
Yeah.
and that has led to all-time high strikeout numbers. I think that's played a factor in these no hitters. Like when you're swinging for the fences and missing a lot of pitches like that, there's less of those, excuse me type hits. There's less infield singles, which, a lot of times that's what breaks up a no hitter. And we just haven't seen that as much. I will say I'm still excited to see no hitters. Like, I still think it's really cool. Like, you see how the teams celebrate, you
Yeah.
see how that pitcher celebrates, with his teammates and with his family and just the joy on their face. Like, those are memorable things that, they're going to have for the rest of their life. So I think that part of it is cool. But I just think when there's a no hitter every other day, and it's honestly, it seems like it's the same teams that are getting no hit a lot. Like,
Yeah.
it's either the
It
Rangers or the Mariners half the time. So, it's a little much at this point. So for me, I just don't understand why they decided to dejuice the balls
yeah.
when people want to see the home runs.
Yeah, so to your point, so the 6 no hitters came against 3 teams. So all 3 teams have been no hit twice this year: the Mariners, the
Was it
Rangers,
the Indians?
and I'm blanking on who the third one
I think
is.
it was the Indians, if I
Okay,
think.
yeah. So yeah, here's the irony of no hitters, right? People love no hitters. There's excitement around no hitters. People don't love 2 hitters. And so you can't
Yeah.
have no hitters without having a ton of 2 hitters as well.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's the problem, right? It's like nobody's complaining about the actual achievement of a no hitter. It's the problem
Right.
that they have become so likely because so many of these games get down to 1 hit or 2 hits. I mean, even if you look at the Dodgers, the first game against the Giants was like a 3-2 game. I think the Dodgers had 2 hits in that game. So those
Yeah.
are the types of games where it's like kind of a snooze fest. And this is coming from, I'll speak for myself. Like, I'm a big baseball fan. Like, we have a show talking
Same.
about baseball and the
Yeah.
Dodgers. You were a pitcher. And so to me, it's just like, I'm not the guy that wants like everybody to be hitting 60 home runs a year. But I
Right.
also like they need to figure something out. And I'm not here, it's a much bigger conversation than we're going to be able to figure out here. But they've got to do something to incentivize players to put the ball in play. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's banning the shift. I don't know if it's, juicing up the ball again or whatever. Because even the home run walk strikeout scenario, yeah, it's more exciting than this, but I still think there's something to be figured out there. So a conversation for another time, but I agree with Kershaw. It's not that we're anti no hitter. We're anti one hitter. We're anti two hitter. We're anti three hitter.
Exactly.
And so that's the problem. Okay, one other Major League Baseball storyline. This is about 6 or 7 days old, but we'll tackle it because we didn't get to last time. It was the whole Tony La Russa 3-0 count. Mercedes off of Williams' studio throwing a 46-mile-an-hour slow ball, and Mercedes hitting the ball 420 feet. I mean, first of all, give him credit because to hit a ball that slow, that far is
Yeah.
unbelievably impressive. La Russa, of course, comes out after the game, throws his own guy under the bus. The Twins come out the next day. They throw at Mercedes. La Russa defends the decision to throw at Mercedes. One of the stupidest things. Trevor Bauer chimes in on Twitter. Dear hitters, if you hit a 3-0 homer off me, I will not consider it a crime. Dear people who are still mad about a hitter hitting, kindly get out of the game. Can't believe we're still talking about 3-0 swings. If you don't like it, managers or pitchers, just be better. Perfect response from Bauer. It sums up all of my
Yep.
thoughts on the issue. If one team is allowed to still be trying, then the other team should still be allowed to try. I've never understood why the batter, if he gets behind 3-0, is just supposed to allow the pitcher to throw a strike. That doesn't fit with any other way that we approach baseball. I don't care if a pitcher's on the mound or a position player's on the mound. We've talked about it. The Dodgers had a game this year where they were up 13-1 and almost lost. Last night they were up 11-0. They gave up like 5 runs. The idea that one team is supposed to stop trying. I think somebody said this. Hey, Twins, just forfeit the game. I don't know if that's allowed. I don't know if they can just go up to the umpire and say, hey, we want to stop playing. But until you do that, there is absolutely no place in the game for Tony La Russa to criticize his own player for hitting baseballs.
Yeah. Well, first thing is, let me start with La Russa here, because even if you feel that way,
Right.
like, there's no reason to say that stuff to the media. Like, your job as a manager is to defend your players and support your players. And I thought it was ridiculous that, like, from literally the same night, like within minutes of each other, like you got La Russa saying this, and then like 3 or 4 White Sox
Yeah.
players, like to the media, saying the exact opposite. Like, how could you be so out of touch with your players to not like understand what's going on here? And then the next day, like your guy gets thrown at, and you're like supporting the other team. Like,
Yeah.
that just made no sense to me. La Russa, we all thought when he got hired, we are like, why'd they do that? Like, this guy's so out of touch, and who knows? We ended up being right. Like, go
Yeah.
figure, right? So yeah, I thought that was ridiculous, but I never understood like these unwritten rules. Like, you can't swing on a 3-0 pitch. Like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, you're in the batter's box. Like, your goal is to get a hit. Like, your stats matter for arbitration. Like,
Yeah.
why would you just like get out on purpose? Like, it just makes no sense to me. And like, and also, like, it's a position player on the mound. Like, the Twins put in a position player knowing very well that he's probably going to get rocked.
Yeah.
Like, he's up there lobbing the ball at
45.
47 miles per hour. Like, what do you expect to happen? Like, you expect the other team to just not swing and like say, all right, we have enough runs. Like, screw it. Like,
Yeah.
let's just get out here. Like, no, come on. Like, and the 3-0 aspect of it, like, why does a position player want to throw more pitches? Like,
Right.
if anything, he should want you to swing at every pitch just to get out of there as quick as possible. Like, he's lobbing it up at 47 miles an hour. Why does he want to throw more pitches? Like,
Yeah.
what is taking 3-0 accomplish in this situation? Like, he's just going to lob it again on 3-1, and then the same thing will happen. Like,
Yeah.
what is the difference there? So this whole thing was just ridiculous to me. It's unfortunate because I feel like there's a lot of good news stories around baseball right now that could be
Yeah.
out there more and people could be focusing on more, but instead we're forced to focus on the silly stuff like this, of like an out of touch manager that just has no clue about what's going on in the game today. So yeah, that whole situation was ridiculous. I agree with you that Bauer summed it up perfectly. Like, if you're on the field, you play the game. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly happy that Mercedes swung at that pitch and hit the ball a mile, because maybe that'll teach the Twins, like, hey, if you want to get us out, put a pitcher on the mound.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah, nothing was more predictable than how this Russa situation has played out. When he got
Yeah.
hired, I think the whole league was like just waiting for this particular moment, something like this to happen. And Russa handled it arguably worse than anybody could have possibly imagined, to throw his own player under the bus in the moment. And then when his players came out to defend Mercedes, he basically said, well, that's why I'm the manager and they're not. Then his guy gets thrown
Yeah.
out. He defends the situation, claims there's going to be consequences for Mercedes. The whole thing, just a disaster. And if there's one positive for me, it was something I think this got mentioned on the Dodgers broadcast. But Chris Woodward, formerly a Dodger coach who's now the manager of the Rangers, he was at the center of a similar situation because I believe it was Tatis hit a home run off them, and he was
Tatis,
critical
yeah.
of Tatis. When they asked him about this, he kind of said, look, this is a different situation. But it sounded like a guy who had actually learned something. And one of the things he said, particularly about this situation, is he's like, I've realized, why have we always told guys not to swing 3-0? He's like, chances are 3-0 is going to be the best pitch that you see. And so if a guy is just throwing a fastball down the middle, why would I tell my guys not to swing at it? Now, it's more complicated than that, but I did take it as a positive that maybe some of these quote unquote old school baseball guys are sort of transitioning out, and the new wave of people that are coming in understand, hey, this is how the game is going to be played. This is how the game is going to be made more fun and more energetic. And you're not doing anything to grow the game or to help the game by being grumpy old curmudgeons and complaining about this type of thing. So Tony La Russa is an absolute embarrassment on the field, off the field. He's an embarrassment. And I feel for being a White Sox fan. Why would any player want to go play for that organization? I can't imagine the guys that are playing there enjoy playing for him. Like, it feels like one more of these moments and we're going to have a mutiny in Chicago. The funny thing is, I think they're actually fairly good this year. Am I right on that? Like, they're actually winning baseball games. And so if this was a last place team, I think this would be a lot uglier. I'm not crediting La Russa 1 ounce for how good they are playing. I think they've got good baseball players, but anyways, enough Tony La Russa talk for today, but I felt like Bauer summed it up perfectly, and we'll go from there. So let's move on back to the Dodgers specific stuff. Stock up and stock down. Obviously a 7-0 week. It's hard to find stock down. I've got a couple suggestions and ideas, but I'll let you go first. Stock up, number one player for you is who?
Yeah, well, my first stock up is Gavin Lux for obvious reasons. You mentioned kind of at the beginning of the show what started the turnaround. Was it Mookie getting hit in the nuts, or was it Albert Pujols coming over? Well, maybe it was Gavin Lux taking that one big swing, hitting that 1 3-run homer, and then pumping up his teammates right after. I feel like that kind of, at least for him personally, that was kind of like a big weight like lifted off his shoulder. He was really struggling at that time. And he's been red hot ever since. Since that game, he's batting .364 with a .417 on base and .636 slugging. So that's an OPS over 1,000. 3 homers and 14 RBIs in 12 games. So we obviously saw he hit the grand slam yesterday. So Gavin Lux, he looks awesome. He even said he's feeling locked in mechanically right now, which we've said all along. That's the key for him. He's a very rhythm type hitter, mechanical type hitter, and if his mechanics are out of whack, then he's just going to be all over the place. And he looks locked in right now, which is great to see. He was a top prospect for a reason here, right? Like we know the guy could hit. We saw his AAA numbers a couple, seasons ago. So it looks like he's finally reaching that potential. He's comfortable now. He's playing shortstop, which is his normal position. So nothing but positive things to say about Gavin Lux from me.
Yeah.
He's looked great. And I think it's the tight pants. I've said it all along. Like those tight pants do wonders for a guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what just knowing you're going to be in the lineup every day and having some confidence of having seen the ball land in the grass or over the fence or whatever it is. Like, it's amazing what those two things will do for a guy. He's not worrying about playing defense because he's been so fantastic there. It's just coming naturally. It's amazing what that'll do. I'll go on the mound. Julio Urias is my first stock up. A great week from him. 12 2/3, 2 wins, 18 strikeouts, no walks, just six base runners reached in 12 2/3, plus 3 for 6 at the dish, 1 run and 2 RBI for Julio.
Smoked that ball.
He was perfect through 5 2/3 yesterday before an infield single kind of busted that up. But I mean, look, we've talked about Urias. We don't need to hammer this home. Like Lux, a guy that was a former top prospect. Like Lux, a guy that is reaching the potential that we thought he always had. I know he's been around for a long time. He is still young, and this is who he is. He's a lefty who pounds the strike zone. He's getting swing and miss. He's got a nasty breaking ball to go with a solid fastball. obviously the batting stuff is just gravy on top. 3 for 6 with a run and 2 RBI. He's got to slow down a little bit because we can't be threatening Clayton Kershaw's Silver Slugger campaign here. Okay, so calm down maybe with the bat. Kershaw can pull him aside and say, hey, I like it, but maybe when we got a 5-run lead, maybe you just, watch a few pitches there kind of thing. But, Julio's been great. 18 strikeouts, no walks. No, not much more I can say from him.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. He's been awesome. Everyone can see it. It's pretty insane. I guess my third stock up was the full starting rotation. I guess I'll just do that now. They all four of those guys have just been incredible this season. All four of them could very well be all-stars, at the rate they're going. And it's been huge. We talked earlier in the show about how the team doesn't have a fifth starter right now. They had 2 bullpen games in the last week. And the only way you could actually feasibly do that is if your other 4 guys are A, giving you length, and B, they're successful, like they're winning all those other games. So it's like, all right, we could do a bullpen game, and if we lose, we lose. But all those guys, they're all going at least 6 innings every start. They're not giving up runs. They're giving the team a chance to win every single night. So nothing but good things to say about all 4 of those guys. It's pretty insane. Like the Dodgers, straight up, they have 4 aces. Like you just gave out Julio's numbers. Like he's the team's 4th starter. Like there are more than half the teams in baseball where he goes over there and he's immediately their number 1. So it's just ridiculous. And they're going to add Tony Gonsolin to this mix pretty soon here, and he's pretty good himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I know everybody's wondering where Muncy is. He's coming, okay? He's coming. He's Daniel's 3rd entry in this category. I'll go another hitter that quietly, I think this is watching the games. Maybe I didn't notice this, but Will Smith had himself a really great week this week.
Yep.
He had an OPS of 1.255 this past week, 2 home runs, 7 runs, 4 RBIs. It's just nice to see. I mean, this is a guy who has been solid. I mean, maybe not spectacular to the degree that we had kind of hoped. Obviously, offensively, catchers around the league are not great. But Will Smith had himself a really great week. And if he can turn the switch a little bit and kind of tap back into, best catcher in baseball, Will Smith, which we've seen from the plate, that would be huge for the Dodgers, especially with some uncertainty with Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger maybe taking a little bit of time, Zach McKinstry to sort of reintegrate themselves and catch back up to Major League Baseball pitching. If Will Smith can be an anchor in the middle of that lineup, that would be huge for the Dodgers.
Yeah. I mean, Will Smith has done it all this year. You talk about the bat, but also his defense has looked much better than it's looked, in previous years. So that's also a huge positive, because that's the only thing that kept him off the field, on an everyday basis the last couple of years. So now that the defense has improved, we're seeing his playing time go up and up. Hopefully that it continues that way. He's throwing runners out. He's framing a lot better. And that's in addition to being one of the best offensive catchers in baseball. So yeah, Will Smith has been awesome this year. And my third one, you just mentioned, it's Max Muncy. The guy, he's one of the hottest hitters, if not the hottest hitter on the planet right now. I mean, I know Jesse Winker hit like 5 home runs this weekend. Acuna hits a home run basically every day. Tatis was like 13 for 16 over the weekend. So there's plenty of hot hitters in baseball, but in the month of May, no one's been better than Max Muncy. He's slashing 381, 500, 762 in 19 games with 7 homers. I mean, we saw him. He hit, I think it was 2 homers in the series against the Giants. He went Splash Town for one of them. He didn't tell the pitcher to go get it out of the ocean, which I was a little bummed out about. But that ball was absolutely destroyed. I mean, that thing almost cleared the whole bay. And then he comes back the next day and hits one to center. So yeah, Max Muncy has just been incredible all year. Even when he was struggling, like at least he was still drawing walks and getting on base. So yeah, so far Max Muncy has been the Dodgers, best hitter overall, I'd say. And that's been huge with so many guys, in and out of the lineup.
Yeah, somebody joked that Max Muncy's walk rate is plummeting simply because he's actually putting the ball in play for a change.
He's hitting more.
I mean, so first let me say, the home run he hit into the bay, I can't remember a ball that was hit further into the water. I mean, not a ton of pitches make it all the way out there. I saw some they've got sensors out there, and they can track the wind and where the ball's moving. And he said that ball, because of where it was hit to, it actually traveled about 11 feet less in distance than it would have in normal settings.
That's
that
crazy.
ball was absolutely smashed. I was looking up in prep for this. So last week, this is what I said about Max Muncy. He had just completed a week where he put up 0.6 wins above replacement. He had an OPS of 1.571 with 3 home runs, 6 runs, 7 RBIs, and a 500 batting average. That was last week. This week, 0.7 wins above replacement. This guy has put up 1.3 wins above replacement in 2 weeks, in 14
That's
days.
crazy.
OPS of 1.434, 2 home runs, 7 runs again, and 2 RBIs. An absolutely insane stretch for Max Muncy. So shout out to him. I'm going to go stock down. I've got a bunch of guys on here. I'll give a shout out here in a moment. But I'm going to go stock down on this last one, and it's Joe Kelly. And I think this is like a personal thing for me. This isn't really like an overall thing, but basically, I just have to give up on the fact that Joe Kelly's ever going to be a high leverage reliever for the Dodgers. And you can tell me if you disagree with this, but I just think we're running out of excuses. Like, I think there's perpetually something like, well, as soon as he figures this out, and it was like, okay, well, now that he's gotten this shoulder surgery, he's going to be fine. As soon as he gets some reps under his belt, yada, yada, yada. I just think it doesn't mean Joe Kelly can't help. We know what the contract he signed for. It was a lot of money at the time, especially when you looked at, like, if we're being honest, he's never really been a high leverage reliever for an extended period of time. Yes, he was good against the Dodgers in the World Series, but the way I put it is I have come to accept that he is closer to Alex Vesia than he is to Blake Trinan in the grand scheme of things as a relief pitcher. So that's where I'm at. Do you disagree with that assessment, or maybe you just came to terms with this earlier than I did?
I mean, I'd say let's just give it a little more time. Like he just kind of he just came back. It's only been a couple weeks, and I know I'm making the exact excuses that you were just talking about. So I fully understand what you're saying. But I think one bad outing is not the end of the world. Like if he's gonna give you 4 or 5 good outings and then have a clunker, like you take that. Like the ERA won't look good because of that because he's a reliever. Like you have one bad outing like that, it
Yeah.
kind of ruins your ERA. But I think he's shown he could have good outings at times. I'm with you. I'm never gonna trust him in a one-run game in the ninth inning or
Yeah.
anything like that. Like I think there are 4 or 5 other arms in that bullpen that are more trustworthy than him. But I still think he could have a strong season. He could help this team win games.
Totally.
Like I agree. I agree. He's making more money than you're getting out of him. That's for sure. There's no denying that. But I think he could kind of turn things around here and at least have some good outings and help the team win. But I'm with you. I'm never gonna trust him in a one-run game late. Like that's we're way past that point for me. We're basically at that point. His first season with the team, as
Yeah.
far as I was concerned. But I think he'll be fine. Like as your 5th or 6th best reliever or whatever. Like I'm not putting him in the Vesia category or the Dennis Santana or Edwin Uceda category.
Yeah.
I don't think he's that low, but I definitely don't think he's in with the top tier guys. To your point.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm just saying I think he's closer to Vesia than he is to Trinan. If there's a
Okay.
scale of those guys to those guys, I would put him more towards the front. A couple other shout outs I've got to give. Kenley Jansen, 4 games, 4 and a third inning pitch, 4 saves, 1 hit, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. He's been lights out. He's pitching on short rest. Great for him. Nate Jones, we'll have to see, small sample size, but I mean,
Nate Jones?
yeah, exactly. I mean, just an unbelievable. This is another best year was 5 years ago guy. He's perpetually had issues with walks and control. But again, I mean, he comes into a game. Trevor Bauer, I'll group these guys together. They're putting Bauer the day after bullpen games. Bauer comes in. Price, Nelson, Vesia, Kelly, Gonzalez, Trinan, Jansen had all pitched the day before. Kelly, Gonzalez, and Jansen the day before that. Price and Nelson multiple innings. So basically no bullpen. They say to Bauer, go do what you can do. Throws 126 pitches. They go to Jones. They get 5 outs from Jones. He doesn't allow a base runner with 2 strikeouts. This is a guy who's been on the roster for like a week. Not even the roster for a week. He's been in the organization for a week. He was in the minor leagues. So who knows what we're going to get out of him. Somebody was doing some stuff of he's predominantly a 2-seamer. The Dodgers had him throwing entirely 4-seamers, which is like he's never done before. I was texting with a friend who's sort of followed him throughout his career and said, I mean, the stuff has always been there. It's just a matter of he's a roller coaster. So we'll
Yeah.
see. But shout out to him that he's had one performance when the Dodgers needed it. It was great. And so good for him. And then one other, just throw this out there, a stock down. This is a narrative stock down. I feel like the Will Smith Albert Pujols narrative has run its course. Like I feel like every time Albert Pujols and Will Smith are next to each other in the dugout, like I don't need screenshots of it on my timeline. I don't need the announcers to remind me that Will Smith idolizes Albert Pujols. Maybe I'm just a pessimistic. Maybe I'm being the old grumpy guy here, but I just feel like, okay, I got it. Like we're good. Will Smith loves Albert Pujols. He looks up to him. Will Smith's a sweet guy. Albert Pujols is a sweet guy. I get it. Am I overthinking this too much? Has that narrative run its course a little bit too much?
Nah, I think we got it in that one game where they both homered and they're greeting each other at home and high-fiving. and it was really cool in that game. It was
Totally.
awesome. It was like, yeah, this was his favorite player growing up. We have the evidence. He filmed the video for him when they
Yeah.
were doing the rings. Um, so I thought it was really cool in that game. But I'm with you. Like, we don't need to rehash it every single time. They're gonna be close to each other in the lineup a lot. So we're gonna see them, standing close to each other a lot. We don't have to bring it up every single time. I think everyone is aware at this point. It's really cool. Like, don't get me wrong, and I'm happy for Will Smith. Like, I could only imagine like playing
Yeah.
baseball like with my favorite player growing up. Like, that's incredible. That's awesome. But yeah, we don't need to bring it up every time. I think everyone knows at
Got it.
this
Yeah.
point, that he idolized him. But real quick on Nate Jones, I just gotta say, like, what a performance
Yeah.
that was. Like Dave Roberts said, he landed in San Francisco at like 5 o'clock. So like right before the game, he just got off a plane. He's meeting and greeting all his teammates. Next thing you know, a game's starting. And then next thing he knows, he's on the mound in a one-run game, against the first place team,
Yeah.
your rivals. And he's asked to get 5 outs, and he gets them all without any issues. And from what we've seen from the bullpen specifically, like the guys who have been up and down, the front end of the bullpen type guys, we haven't seen
Yeah.
a performance like that. Like usually those guys come in and blow the lead. So that was awesome. I mean, credit to him. He stayed poised. I guess he's been doing this a long time. So I guess that's what kind of helped him there. Like it wasn't like a young guy coming up
Yeah.
and doing that, which would have been even more impressive. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what we're gonna get out of Nate Jones. But hey, that outing alone, if that's his only contribution to the team, like that's enough for me. Like that was a big reason why the Dodgers won that game.
Yeah.
But also just on his delivery, like he throws the ball pretty funky. Like I could see how he could be successful. Like he kind of short arms the ball, but then like it gets there at 96 miles per hour. Like so it gets to the hitter quick. So I could see him kind of having success just because of that funk. You mentioned he's throwing more four seamers, which is good. We've seen the Dodgers have success with relievers
Yeah.
like this, a lot. Like, the guy's had a solid career, so it's not like he's some scrub, but he just kind of has to recapture what he previously, was able to do. So, and there's no one better to do that for him than the Dodgers. So, yeah, huge props to him. I'm glad you mentioned him and he didn't get overlooked because he deserves, a ton of credit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we got a few minutes left in the show. Let's move ahead to the week upcoming. I mean, the Astros and the Giants. It doesn't get much better if you're a Dodger fan than this. The
Yeah.
Dodgers traveled to Houston for 2 games. A little backstory on the Astros. They just got swept by the Texas Rangers, but had won 8 of 9 before that. This is a team that, like everybody else in baseball, has some injuries. Our boy Pedro Baez out, Justin Verlander out. They've got basically the back half of their rotation, and then the 2 guys after that are all injured. We get Kershaw versus Greinke on Tuesday. That's a Fox Sports 1 game. We have Bauer versus Garcia on Wednesday. That's an ESPN game. I guess just a scouting report. It's good news for the Dodgers. They get to face 2 right-handed pitchers. The Dodgers are the best in the league against right-handed pitchers by a lot. Their weighted runs created is 124, so 100 is average. So they're 24% better than average. The next best team in baseball is at 114, so they're 10 points higher than everybody against righties. So getting to face 2 righties there is good. A couple interesting subplots. Houston is the second best team in baseball against lefties. So Clayton Kershaw, that could be a tough matchup for him. And also Houston has the lowest strikeout percentage in all of baseball. Trevor Bauer is 5th in strikeout percentage, so some interesting storylines there. And then, of course, you've got Clayton Kershaw versus the Astros. As far as I could tell, this is the first time he'll be pitching against them since the World Series in 2017. Of course, he had a great first start, 7 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned, 11 strikeouts. And then the second start was the one everyone remembers, 4 2/3, 6 earned runs for him. He did come back 2 days later, 4 innings, 2 hits, no earned out of the bullpen. Has not faced them since. So all of that to say, what are you looking forward to in this series? And then maybe the bigger question, are you expecting any fireworks in this one?
Yeah, I'll answer the second one first. I'm gonna say I'm not expecting any fireworks. I know it'll be the first time fans are in there, so I
Yeah,
bet the Houston fans are gonna give it to the Dodgers, like for whatever reason. Like it's not like the Dodgers did anything wrong.
yeah,
Like if anything, they should be happy. Like you guys got your one and only World Series because you cheated to beat the Dodgers. So, but whatever. Like this is also the first time they're gonna have full capacity. So sure that was some huge, coincidence,
yeah,
right? But I'm not expecting any fireworks. Like I feel like as the years go by, there's less and less players from each team from that 2017 World Series. Like when you look at the Astros roster right now, like it's really only it's really only Bregman, Correa, Altuve, and Gurriel.
Yeah.
And outside of that, I'm pretty sure there's not maybe like a couple relievers or whatever, but like Verlander's out. All their other starters from that team are gone. Springer's gone, Marwin Gonzalez, a bunch of those
McCullers.
other guys are gone. So, oh, McCullers too, yeah. But I feel like as time goes by, I think we're getting more and more past
Yeah.
that as far as the on-field fireworks go. Who knows? Maybe the Astros will try to start something just because of the Joe Kelly stuff last year. Like, maybe they'll try to throw out the Dodgers. I'm not expecting anything from the Dodgers side, but I guess we'll see from the Astros side. But I think it'll be good, clean baseball between two good teams. You mentioned Kershaw Greinke the first game. That'll be a lot of fun. I think I haven't checked the numbers, but feels like the Dodgers have hit Greinke pretty well since he left them. Like going back to when he was in Arizona. So that's a good matchup for the Dodgers. They obviously love hitting righties. But and then Bauer Garcia is another good matchup as well. I picked up Garcia on one of my fantasy teams, and he doesn't give a ton of length. Like he's not going to go beyond 5 innings, but he's also really good at not giving up runs. So like a normal start for him is like 5 innings, 1 or 2 runs, which isn't bad at all. And Bauer, obviously, we know what he's capable of. He hates the Astros just as much as the Dodgers,
Totally.
by the way. Like he's gotten into his own stuff with them, so I'm sure he's looking forward to this start. Astros fans, they don't like him either, so I'm sure they'll let him have it. I think that would be awesome if he basically does the same thing against the Giants, where he just shoves against them and then pumps up the crowd. That would be really cool. But it should be a fun series between two good teams. One luxury the Dodgers will have, they'll have the DH, which is always nice. I'm pretty sure this is the last time they'll have the DH until like September or something. But yeah, it should be a good series. Hopefully the Dodgers could keep things rolling. Similar to the Giants, it's always nice beating the Astros. That's not a team you want to lose to, that's for sure.
Yeah, the Bauer piece is with fireworks. I think I agree. I think the Dodgers kind of did their stuff. Joe Kelly did what he did, and I think they sort of got that out of their system last year. And as you said, I mean, at some point, fans are not going to move on, but the guys on the field at some point stop caring, to the degree that we do, and they just got to move on. The Bauer piece, I think, is the interesting one because he was highly critical of them as cheaters. And Bauer is just, we know he's got the troll thing in his bag. And so if Trevor Bauer is dominating the way he was against the Giants, and if he does the sword celebration against Altuve or one of these guys, like I could see them not having a positive reaction, much like Correa had a very negative reaction to Joe Kelly last year. And so that would be the Wednesday game. I think would be the one that's interesting. Obviously, if Joe Kelly comes into the game, all bets are off. What's going to happen next?
That's true.
And who knows? I mean, if one of these games gets out of hand and there's like an 8-run lead one way or the other, who knows? We know, again, the Dodgers haven't forgotten. It's not like they've just gotten over, who cares? They obviously still don't like it. There's a bad taste left in their mouth, but at some point they move on. So the other one, just briefly, the Giants for 4 games at home. So the Dodgers have a day off today on Monday and then play through the rest of the week. The matchups for that one, there should be a bullpen game on Thursday against Alex Wood. Walker Buehler on the mound Friday. Presumably, I would guess against Scott Kazmir. I think he probably earned himself another start, especially against the Dodgers based on how he pitched. Urias and DeSclafani on Saturday. You and I are going to go live Saturday, so that's a 4:10 game. So we'll do an early post-game show on Saturday night. And then Kershaw versus Gausman on Sunday. That's the matchup that neither team has seen yet. Giants are on the same schedule as the Dodgers, off day Monday, and then games on Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's at home. The Dodgers have been much better at home than they've been on the road. Again, there's a possibility that McKinstry and Bellinger could be rejoining the team for Friday or Saturday of that series. Any reason to believe that series will be dramatically different than the one we just saw?
No. I mean, I will say the Sunday matchup, I mean, Gausman has been not only the Giants' best pitcher, but he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. So I guess that helps considering, we just saw what happened with the 3 guys before him.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting more of the same. Maybe it's a 4-game series, so hopefully that we could sweep, but maybe the Giants get a game.
Yeah.
I'd be perfectly fine with 3 out of 4. Like that's a great series there. But yeah, the Dodgers, they're just playing good baseball right now. So hopefully they could keep it rolling.
Yeah. I look ahead and I always like to think, okay, what's a successful week? I think 4-2. If you can win 4 out of 6 against the Astros and the Giants, I think that's a successful week. I think that's just the standard. The Dodgers want to be winning 2 out of every 3 games. That's kind of where they're going to be at win percentage long run. And, the Astros on the road, that's a tough opponent, a tough situation to walk into. But 4 games at home against the Giants isn't really quite as tough. And so for me, 4-2 is kind of the baseline. I think anything less will be slightly disappointing. I mean, if they go 3-3, it's not the end of the world, but 4-2, I think, would be the baseline for me. And then obviously, if you can go 5-1 and, maybe sweep the Astros and take 3 out of 4 against the Giants, something like that, that would be good. So exciting week again for the Dodgers coming up, Astros and the Giants. So that'll do it for us today. Again, Daniel and I will be back live on Saturday night, not 11 p.m. edition, thankfully. So hopefully we'll be recording. Hopefully we'll be streaming around 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. So make sure you're subscribed here, notifications on at the Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube channel, Dodger Blue 1958 everywhere. And my hope is, the plan was to have this last week. It was why it was a light week. But Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic, the new Dodgers beat reporter, is set to join me. I believe we're going to be recording that on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. So stay tuned for that. That should be good, just to hear his perspective. This is a guy who's covered Albert Pujols for a long time. He's been around sort of baseball for a while. So to get sort of an outsider's perspective as somebody who's now on the inside, I think should be a fun one. So stay tuned for that.
Real quick, we were talking about when the Dodgers' run kind of started. He also started covering them right around the same time Pujols came over, so I guess he deserves a little credit there as well.
Yeah, I'll have to ask him. Fabian, who deserves more credit, you or the nut shot to Mookie Betts? What do you think? We'll see what he says to that. So, but yeah, make sure you're subscribed here, Dodger Blue 1958, everywhere on social media, and then check out DodgerBlue.com. All the latest news and reactions, post-game reports, that kind of thing is on there. So that's Daniel Starkand. I'm Jeff Spiegel. We appreciate you, as always, for joining us. We will see you on Saturday night for a live postgame. I'll be back a couple times between then. And yes, submit names for the broom. We need names for the broom. We're hoping to get that thing out here a lot more this season. So thanks for joining us. As always, Vince Scully.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.